Hello. We're going to be looking at calculating with fractions today. When you calculate with fractions, you can add, subtract, multiply or divide just like you can with regular numbers. The difference is that with regular numbers it's easier to add and take and harder to multiply and divide. With fractions it's the opposite way round. Multiplying and dividing is a lot easier than adding and taking. So today we're going to be looking at the multiplying and dividing fractions. Really simple, shouldn't take very long to work out. Let's take a look at some. First question over there, a half times a half. All we're going to do with this is really straightforward. We're going to multiply the top two numbers together and we're going to multiply the bottom two numbers together. And that is the end. So 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. That's the answer. A half times a half is a quarter. All you need to do is to be able to multiply two numbers together and possibly sometimes simplify. You might be looking at that and thinking that's a bit of a weird answer. When you multiply two numbers together, like 2 times 3, 3 times 6, your answer is always larger than what you started with. A quarter is quite clearly smaller than a half. You've got to think of this as, instead of a half times a half, thinking of it as a half of a half. Just like 3 times 4 is kind of 3 lots of 4. It's a half of a half, which obviously is a quarter. So let's go on to one that's marginally more difficult, but not much. 2/3 times 3/4, multiply across the top. So 2 times 3 makes 6. 3 times 4 across the bottom makes 12. Now that's not finished this time because that can be simplified, can't it? And you know, I hope, from previous videos and previous books you may have read, that if the number on the top of the fraction, the numerator, is half the size of the number on the bottom of the fraction, the denominator, it's equivalent to a half. So actually the answer to that is a half. You could have simplified it more steadily. You could have made that 3 out of 6 and then got to a half, but I've just taken a bit of a shortcut. Now, below there we've got some mixed numbers, 2 2/5 times 3 1/2. When you're going to multiply those together, what you've got to do is you've got to convert them into improper fractions first. Alright, so if you remember how to do that, if not, take a look at the video on mixed numbers and improper fractions. To convert 2 2/5 into an improper fraction, we're doing 5 times 2 there. So the whole number multiplied by the denominator. 5 times 2 is 10. Add on that top number there, which makes 12. So that's going to be 12 over 5 times 3 1/2. 3 times 2 makes 6. Add on that 1 makes 7 over 2. Okay, do the multiplication next. 12 sevens are 84. 5 2s are 10. Your answer is 84 over 10. That's a bit unwieldy. You can see why they call the next stage simplifying, can't you? Let's simplify 84 over 10. We could half it. So half of 84 is 42. Half of 10 is 5. You can't simplify that anymore because they're not on the same times table, but you can turn it back into a mixed number. Divide 42 by 5, 8 5s are 40, remainder 2, so it's going to be 8 2/5. It's exactly the same process as the other multiplications, it's just that you've got to turn them into improper fractions first, then you've got to turn them back into mixed numbers at the end. That's what multiplying fractions is then. Straight across the top, straight across the bottom, simplify it if you need to. Really straightforward. Dividing fractions is almost as easy. Here's a couple of divisions. Okay, let's take a look at these. Apologies, you see all my mess there. Right, dividing fractions is really straightforward as well. 3/4 divided by 2/5. Now, the way we do this is really fairly straightforward for us. We rewrite the question, and we always do the same thing. You keep the first of the fractions, 3/4. You turn the other fraction upside down, 5/2, and then you multiply them. Okay, so you keep your first fraction as it is. You turn your second fraction upside down. In other words, you're finding the inverse of that fraction. And then you multiply, because multiplying is the inverse of dividing. So, nice and straightforward now. 3 5s are 15. 4 2s are 8. The answer is 15/8. Now, 15/8 is a bit of a strange one. It's bigger than 1, isn't it? How many 8s in 15? There's a whole 1. And we have 7 left over. So it's 1 7/8. Let's look at the next one. A half divided by a seventh. So keep the first fraction as it is. Multiply by the second fraction, which has been turned upside down. So 1/2 times 7/1. Multiply across the top. 1 times 7 is 7. Multiply across the bottom. 2 times 1 is 2. Once again, that's going to have to be changed into a mixed number. To change it into a mixed number, you're dividing 2's into 7. How many 2's in 7? 3 2's are 6. And there's 1 left over. 3.5. And there we are. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. Let's just take a look now at a mixed number version, just in case you have to do one of those. And to do a mixed number, exactly like we would have done when we were doing the multiplication, first of all, turn it into an improper fraction. To turn this into an improper fraction, 4 times 2 makes 8, plus 1 is 9. So that's 9/4, divided by 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 makes 7. So that's 7/5. Now, we've not done anything clever yet, have we? All we've done is turn it into a improper fraction. So now, 9/4 times 5/7. Okay. 9 5s are 45. 4 7s are 28. All right. So now we've got our final section here. 45/28. What can that be divided by? Can it be simplified in any way? Are they on any times tables that are the same? 45's on the 5 times table and on the 9 times table, so no help there. 28's on the 7 times table and the 4 times table, so there's nothing else there. But we can go above 1, can't we? Let's have a look. 1/28 in 45, plus how many 28ths? Well, 10 more 28ths would take us to 38. And so we've got 17 28ths. 17 28ths there. The answer to that is 1 17 28. It's a little bit complicated to look at, but that's how we do it. So dividing fractions then, upside down for the second fraction. Here we are. Just a quick reminder. Take the first fraction, leave it the same. The second fraction, we turn it upside down and we multiply rather than divide. That is multiplying and dividing fractions. I hope that makes sense. We have another video on adding and taking fractions, which is a little bit harder. Please watch that to make sure that you can do all of the fraction calculations. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.